Hi there, my name's Robert Hammond, and about a couple of weeks ago I made a series of short videos on the Huxley brothers. That's Julian Huxley and Aldous Huxley, and the books were Essays in Popular Science by Julian Huxley and the classic A Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. And I was trying to connect the dots between the two because Julian Huxley's book, he's as a biologist. So was his brother, but he made practical non-fictional books on how science can be used to control society, and he was really, putting it forward as a non-fiction, how it could be achieved. And then Aldous Huxley had a different approach, at a different angle. He was writing fiction, presenting it as fiction, but it was never the intention. It was there to get people used to the same ideas that his brother was preaching. So I made those videos, and then briefly, I think at the last section of the video, I said that I may do some other talks and topics that were relevant because I've got lots of old books and they're all kind of connected, and so I thought, if I could, I'd do some more videos, and so here I am. And the book of today is Vance Packard's The People Shapers. This one here, and this is really good book. It's right on par with what I discussed in my last videos. If you haven't seen them, you can hopefully you can find them on YouTube, and then you can see where I'm coming from. And this book was written in 1978, so it was kind of the late 70s. The People Shapers. On the back, it reads from the Evening News, a chilling warning. Vance Packard's picture of a new world being ushered in by the more advanced pioneers of medical science is so hideous as to make Orwell's dictatorship like a freedom-loving paradise. Talking about George Orwell, 1984. The Daily Mirror comments, a frightening title for a book about frightening possibilities. The Guardian, it says, important and fascinating. And there are a few other comments from other papers. So it was mainstream, but it has everything from George Orwell, as mentioned, Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, and other possibilities. But it's not a science fiction book. It's a practical book. Because here they're speaking in detail about how they can achieve what Aldous Huxley was talking about and his brother, and they're mentioning the many scientists that are at work that are, trying to make these dreams a possibility, and so it's very relevant. It's a very good book. There's lots in it. As I said, it includes all of Huxley's stuff, but another thing here is the idea of cybernetics, and also putting implants in people, and it makes me think of the identification chip, but also the microchip in the form of a brain implant chip to redirect your thoughts, to control your thoughts, and read your mind and all of that, artificial telepathy. And then you can think of transhumanism, and Huxley's stuff is about transhumanism as well. I think posthumanism means no longer human. So there's that thrown in as well. And bearing in mind, this was in 1978 when they say computer technology was in its infancy. I mean, really, the first computers that people had in their houses were in the 80s. From what I know, I mean, I had some really basic computers like a Spectrum, and my neighbour had a Commodore, and that was like in the 80s, the mid 80s. So it's quite advanced for its time, and there's a chap that's mentioned a lot in it called Josie Delgado, if I can pronounce his name correctly. He was born in 1915, died in 2011, not long ago, age 96. And his fields were neuroscience, physiology and psychiatry. He was a Spanish professor of physiology at Yale University, famed for his research on mind control through electrical stimulation of the brain. And his inventions were I think it was called a stimoceiver. Basically, it was a device that evoked electrical signals to evoke responses in the brain in cats, monkeys, and in humans in the end. Yes, stimo receiver, a radio which joined a stimulator of the brain waves with a receiver which monitored EEG waves and sent them back on a separate radio channel. So you had kind of like a receiver transmitter, which was in the 1950s, I believe. He was doing that, and it was all on remote control. It became wireless, and he was famous for practicing it on a ball. He actually implanted an electronic stimulator inside a bull's brain on a certain part of the brain that was responsible for a certain reaction, because he studied the different parts of the brain, and he actually got the ball to, I believe it was sit down, stand up, walk clockwise, walk anti-clockwise. He really had it under control, and he did that on monkeys, and he experimented on humans as well. People who had psychiatric patients, but I don't know, maybe kind of other people as well that we don't know about. He even, in the early days, he didn't go wireless. He actually implanted electrodes whose wires ran from the brain to a bulky piece of equipment and delivered the desired electric charge to the brain, and gave the data feedback as well. But many subjects got infections, so this is pretty gruesome stuff, really. But he was stated here, brain transmitters can remain in a person's head for life. He was saying, you just think of the microchip there. So that's Josie Delgado, I believe his name is, and all of this are copied from Wikipedia. You can look him up on Wikipedia, or you can, if you look on YouTube, you can see that famous experiment he did on the ball. Yeah, so let's look at Mr. Vance Packard. He was born in 1914, similar age to Delgado, and died 1996. His occupation, American journalist, social critic and author. Some of his other books, apart from The People Shapers, were The Hidden Persuaders, and that was about media manipulation, and that was in the 1950s. So quite a while ago. He was I think he was quite advanced for his time. And then you had, in 1964, he did The Naked Society, and it was about the threats to privacy posed by new technologies such as computerized filing, modern surveillance techniques and methods for influencing human behaviour. So he's kind of thrown in the 1984 Big Brother and lots of other things. And he did a few other books as well. So, yeah, as I said, he was quite advanced for his time, I think. And as on my last videos, I've made some notes, and basically it's the same procedure as last time. I've had a dig through the book, and I've underlined some, the most relevant bits that I think are important. And basically, if we're going to go through the book and connect the dots, to a brave new world and other possibilities of transhumanism that we are kind of living in the middle of right now. as I said before, and also look at possibilities for the future. Some of them quite scary, but interesting stuff, I think. I hope you find it as well. Let's have a look at the introduction. This is a comment by Carl Rogers, a humanist psychologist. There's a little quote here. It says, "We can choose to use our growing knowledge to enslave people in ways never dreamed of before, depersonalising them, controlling them by means so carefully selected that they will perhaps never be aware of their loss of personhood." And then we have the contents here. The emerging plastic image of man, number one, or part one, sorry, techniques for controlling behaviour, and the topics are pioneers in programming pigeons and people, their behaviour shapers take on the public, and I think they mentioned the chap Skinner, who was a behaviourist. You probably may have heard of him. I think we studied him at school, I think at one point. Mood management, new personalities for old, and making man more tractable, building brighter or duller people, keeping track of and controlling the populace, moulding super consumers, super athletes, super employees, engineering voter approval, behaviour control by the new hypotechnicians. And then part two, it goes on, techniques for reshaping man, selling and storing the seed of man, starting man in a test tube, leased wombs, artificial wombs, non-human wombs, leased wombs as in rented wombs, and kind of talk about that later. Males or females to order, so that's controlling the gender. Modifying our genetic blueprints, the quality control of new humans, packaging superior people, duplicating humans of a desired model, so we've got the whole designer human thing with Huxley there. They work on man, animal and man computer, so possible cybernetics and transhumanism there. Resetting the clocks in our bodies, the human of totally replaceable parts. Part 3, concerns and countermeasures, second thoughts by the human engineers on controlling the controllers, new trends that can enhance self-direction toward, and last but not least, towards a more robust model of man. So let's look at that on part 2.